The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. January 30, 2015. Chapter 37, The Darkness of Sunset Shimmer. The first thing that came to mind regarding these monsters, was that why did I fall for such an obvious trap? I knew that I couldn't hear any of them above the gate, but I managed to walk right into this mess without contemplating what would happen when the crystal switch was activated. Now that I've gone and sprung this elaborate trap, I needed to quickly get these things off of me before they end up poking me and slash or biting me to death. Rarity was just standing over there beside herself with grief, and I was hoping that she would do something, as right now I'm not in the position to do anything. That's when she got a serious look on her face, and walked over to where I was on the ground before a blinding flash blurred my vision for a few moments. When I regained the ability to see, the monsters had retreated to the other side of the room, but what exactly did Rarity do to make them cower away like that?
"Why are you looking at me like that?"
asked Rarity.
"Just a few moments ago, I was buried under several monsters, yet now those same monsters are over there acting like they were scared. They reacted like this the moment you walked over, so clearly you did something to make them want to get as far away from you as possible. Don't try to hide it by spouting some kind of nonsense, as I know what I saw before my vision was blinded,"
I replied.
"I saw you being hurt by those wicked creatures, and felt helpless because, like you said, I am not a warrior because I do not go around fighting monsters. Yet, something within me snapped, and I wanted to help you in any way that I could. I unleashed some kind of magical shining light which blinded them as well as yourself, but since when am I able to use a power like that? I know that we Zora possess some magical properties which are related to the water, but this is something completely different,"
said Rarity.
"It was the equestrian magic inside of you,"
I began.
"The what?"
asked Rarity.
"You have the same kind of magic inside of you that I have, and it's very potent even though it happened as the result of an artifact, while mine is a natural talent I acquired the day I was born. I know that you don't realize it right now as it's difficult to grasp, but you used the power from my true home as a reaction to seeing me being hurt by the monsters. It's something you'll figure out once it all starts to make sense, and there is no need for me to explain it any more than that, so why don't you wait right here while I go and take care of business,"
I replied.
"You seem awfully calm about this,"
said Rarity.
"When I said that you need to keep your emotions under control, I really meant that because you can easily lose yourself to anger and hatred if you allow your heart to become consumed by such feelings. I've been there before on this journey, and it continues to be a struggle even now because I could easily get pushed over the edge. Don't make the mistake that I made Princess Ruto, and lose yourself to the darkness within, for if you do become lost, it may be impossible to find your way back,"
I said. As I walked over to where the monsters were, I thought about what I just said, and I had no idea where I was going with it. I just wanted her to realize that losing control makes things really bad even though you wish to let go for the right reasons, but perhaps I should listen to my own advice. Deep down in my own heart, my emotions were running amok as the thought of confronting the she-demon was giving me numerous mixed messages which had me worried right to the core. Once the monsters realized what was going on, they began to attack, which I responded to by taking out the hook shot, and placing the Hylian shield on my arm so as to protect myself. While this little skirmish was happening, the she-demon could sense that my presence was getting closer to her, yet I was actually a lot further away.
"Yes, I can sense her getting ever closer to this location.
The wait won't be for much longer. Although my patience has already been tested, and all because he said to wait for her here. I should have attacked her much sooner when she first entered this accursed temple, but no, I was commanded to wait here. If she continues to making a complete idiot of herself, then claiming her life and making it my own will have lost all of its meaning. I want to face you, Sunset Shimmer, as this is something we've needed to resolve for a long time, but I want you to be at 100% by the time you come before me like the weakling you are. If you come, and you are injured or even barely able to do anything, then such a glorious encounter will be pointless. I want to be challenged, and not given an easy victory. But was this the intent of Ganondorf to begin with? He said that he wishes to see her suffer defeat at my hands because it is all amusing to him, but what if he instead desires both of us to be dealt with because I still remain a threat?
It seems that he has planned this out carefully, wanting to ensure neither of us survive. Yet what about those words regarding the chosen ones, and she being such a person? Only one thing matters to me now, and that is becoming the real Sunset Shimmer by making my other self disappear forever. And yet, I must know what he was talking about, for it could prove to be useful.
As soon as the last monster was destroyed, which took a while as one shell blade kept blocking my attack, the sound of another gate opened up, and my first thought was that more monsters were about to drop down. Nothing happened after a few moments of waiting, so it was safe to assume that nothing else was going to happen.
Are you sure what you said to the princess was true?
Asked Spike.
I wouldn't have said it if I didn't believe it,
I replied.
Even though what she did saved your life, I can't see how she was able to unleash such a power without doing anything,
said Spike.
Not everything has to be unleashed using a weapon or moving any part of your body, Spike. If you possess a magical power, then you can simply bring it forth. If the equestrian magic she used to frighten those monsters had been really strong, she would have most likely blinded me permanently, and those monsters would have been destroyed rather than simply cowering in fear. I am curious though as to what she meant when she said that her people possess water-related magical powers.
I said.
Now that is something I can explain,
began Spike.
So the Zora do possess magic?
I asked.
You and I would refer to it as magic because they do use a mystical power, but the Zoras don't really like to call it that and instead refer to it as a natural gift. They say that they are able to produce some kind of electrical barrier whenever they swim about in the water, and also create small projectiles with which they use for a variety of actions. What Princess Ruto did when she saved you was neither of the magical skills her people are able to perform, so her having the power from your world does appear to be the case,
replied Spike.
Which means my story, which I've been saying all this time, is true,
I said.
I wouldn't go that far with it, Sunset Shimmer, but I will acknowledge that some aspects of what you've been saying since the beginning of our journey do appear to be rather accurate. Now then, the electrical barrier is only really used by their warriors as it is a means of attacking underwater as well as being a shield they use to protect themselves, yet it takes them many years to be able to master it because it is quite the magic consumption. In case you don't know what that means, in Hyrule, magic doesn't just happen like that without incident. It takes a lot of power, and when it does get used, one's own magic power is consumed until they eventually run out of it. Then they need to go around and restore their magic so that they can continue to use it again,
said Spike.
I've never had to do anything like that,
I said.
That's because your magic isn't native to this world, and follows its own guidelines. What Princess Ruto did most likely didn't consume her magic power, and she appears to be in possession of quite a lot which isn't normal by any stretch of the imagination,"
said Spike.
"Is it possible that she could be the sage of the water temple?"
I asked.
"Quite the bold statement you made there, but I'm inclined to agree as the signs do appear to suggest that. However, we should keep that little secret to ourselves for the time being as we don't want to jump to the wrong conclusion, and I don't think she wants any more pressure on her shoulders. In any case, we've been talking long enough, so let's get going. We should see what lies beyond that second gate because those monsters were guarding it for a reason, and why else would such a setup even be used in the first place?" "Better be prepared for anything just in case,"
replied Spike. Switching boots again, I swam up through this new opened gate and found myself in another small room which consisted of a small treasure chest. Upon climbing out of the water, and kicking it open, I received a small key which had me thinking that this was going to be a repeat of the fire temple where keys were quite plentiful.
"I'm glad the princess mentioned about this hidden passageway as we could have missed this key," I said. "Not necessarily missed it, but rather we'd be forced to come back here after realizing our progress had come to a halt, and that would be wasting precious time,"
said Spike. With the key tucked away in my pocket, I switched back to the iron boots and went back down underwater, and walked over to Rarity who had been waiting for me. She did seem to be a little peeved over the fact that Spike and I had another private conversation without her involvement, but she ignored it and decided to just simply go back to the central chamber. It didn't take long for us to make it back to where the second location to change the water level was, but now the time had come for us to explore more of the second floor. If it wasn't for the fact that I had the urge to do some actual backtracking.
"Is something bothering you?"
asked Rarity.
"While we should definitely explore these new rooms, there is something else that has gotten my attention. After I ran into you earlier in the temple and you wanted me to follow you up to the surface, I saw a cracked wall at the end of a small ledge which looked really suspicious, so I want to go back there and see what could be hiding behind that wall. I couldn't do anything before as bombs don't work underwater, and I believe that the water level has risen high enough to allow me to walk on that ledge while being on dry land,"
I replied.
"Do you expect me to believe that you want to go all the way back there just to confirm a suspicion?"
asked Rarity.
"I take it that you think we should keep on going?"
I asked.
"Not really, as I am aware that some walls in the temple have certainly seen better days, and have fallen into a state of disrepair. It's an embarrassing thing to have to admit as we Zoras do pride ourselves on having the best that our tribe has to offer, but sometimes we do slip up a little and these unfortunate things happen. My father has often said that we need to fix these unsightly blemishes because it makes the temple look less impressive, but I suppose that these cracked walls will prove to be beneficial to you. I'm not certain if anything is hiding behind these walls, but you should be able to see for yourself when you use a bomb,"
replied Rarity.
"Would you mind waiting here until I get back? This should only take me a couple of minutes to go there and come back again,"
I said.
"Actually, I want to come with you as there are some questions that I need to have answered, and you are the only one who can give them to me. At the same time, you have questions which only I can answer, so I figure we can talk about our respective concerns while we go back to where that cracked wall is,"
said Rarity.
"Are you sure about that?"
I asked.
"Positive, and there will be no further arguing on the matter,"
replied Rarity as she began to push me along to give me the incentive to start walking. I wonder what kind of answers I can give her as I already told her about where I really come from, and that she possesses a weaker version of the equestrian magic that I have. Or maybe she has something else in mind, but what did she mean when she said that I have questions for her? Was there something she was keeping to herself that I wanted to know? This felt rather perplexing as I switched over to the iron boots, and dropped down to the lower level of the temple as soon as I walked into the water.
You're thinking, what kind of questions could I ask you, and before you say anything, they have nothing to do with your world or this power inside of me. What I want to know involves what happened on that day 7 years ago.
Did she just ask me about what happened when I was sealed away? I thought Rarity would have known about that given how significant it was, but maybe she chose to tone it out or something out of fear because of what Ganondorf was going to do.
I thought you knew what happened,
I asked.
Everyone in Hyrule knows that Ganondorf came to power 7 years ago when he claimed the Triforce, but what I want to know is how do you fit into all of this? You told me back then you were going to prevent him from entering the resting place of the Golden Power, and that's why you needed the spiritual stone of water. Most people believe that the reason this land has fallen into so much despair was because the Gerudo King was granted access by someone who wore green. That would be you, I believe, as I remember you used to wear green for whatever reason you may have had,
replied Rarity.
So the people believe that I am responsible for all this?
I asked.
No, they don't know that it was you, as all that was said was someone wearing green opened the way for Ganondorf,
replied Rarity.
I did open the entrance to the sacred realm, but it wasn't for him because that would have been a complete betrayal of Hyrule. The plan was to enter the realm and secure the Triforce using the Ocarina of Time and the spiritual stones, but I wasn't able to make it to the castle fast enough as the king was murdered by Ganondorf, and the princess was whisked away to safety by her attendant. Once I was told what needed to be done through a message left behind by Zelda, I entered the Temple of Time, but the evil king confronted me as he figured out that I was holding all of the keys. He was determined to enter by any means necessary, and I was the only one who could stop him,
I said.
You decided to face off against that man in combat? I won't deny your bravery, but you were clearly crazy to do so, as he was known throughout the land as one of the strongest men around,
said Rarity. If this was true, then I wish that I had learned about that much sooner, as it would have given me the chance to simply not accept the destiny which had been placed onto my shoulders. Then again, refusing would have labeled me as a coward who would prefer to save her own skin rather than countless lives who deserve to life.
Be thankful, darling, that you were able to survive against his power, but in the end it wasn't enough to stop him, as he clearly banished you to the sacred realm. No, he never did anything of the sort,
I said.
Then what caused it?
Asked Rarity.
Ganondorf was more powerful than I could imagine, and he let me know this by beating me to within an inch of my life. Just when it looked like I was going to die, I lost control of my emotions and I transformed into a more powerful form, where I managed to impale him with the Master Sword as though it were guiding my actions. Unfortunately, this is what he wanted, for the sword deemed me unworthy to be the hero of time, so my spirit was sealed away into the sacred realm. From there, you know the rest of the story as to how Hyrule became the way it is,
I replied. It felt uncomfortable having to retell my experiences of what happened back then, but I suppose that it was necessary, as keeping it bottled up only makes it more painful. As we were walking back to the room where I first met Rarity, she looked as though she had been thinking about something, and I was afraid of what she was going to say, but I had a feeling that it was going to involve my transformation.
Did you say that you transformed?
Asked Rarity. I knew that's what she was thinking, and I was hoping that it wasn't going to be about that. She then had a look in her eye which was screaming that she wanted to know more about it, but how could I explain to her not only why I transform, but also what I get from it when it happens?
It's something I don't like to talk about, I said. That's fair enough, as some things are best kept a secret to protect others,
said Rarity. It felt like I had just dodged a major situation with her not wanting to know more, but I was relieved as my transformation is the last thing I want to think about, what with the she-demon being the priority for me. Once we arrived back in the room, I switched boots and floated upwards to the surface, and as I suspected the water level was high enough to reach the ledge and allow for the use of bombs. Taking out the bomb bag that hung onto my pouch, and pulling out a single bomb, I walked over to the wall, placed it down next to it, and walked back with the bomb exploding a few seconds later. Behind the now destroyed wall was a secret room which contained a small treasure chest, and when I kicked it open, it produced yet another small key. Whoever hid all of these keys must have been a real genius for using such out-of-the-way and inconspicuous locations. With this next key in hand, we began to head back to the central chamber once again, which meant having to walk underwater, and by this time I was starting to get used to it, but Rarity was looking at me constantly as though she was expecting me to say something.
Well, I've heard your answers to my question, so I think it's high time for the reverse to happen. What would I want to know about?
I asked.
Regarding how Zora's domain became the way it is,
replied Rarity.
Yeah, that has been on my mind given that I've been told what happened to the other regions of Hyrule,
I said.
Then I shall tell you how it all happened. I remember that day 7 years ago when Ganondorf suddenly took over by conquering the castle in a matter of days, and by himself, which I am sure you are well aware of. When news of what happened reached my father, he was shocked in that what you said would come to pass, and I couldn't believe it either, although deep down I had a feeling of dread. As you recall, my father refused to give him the spiritual stone, so deep down he knew that our people were going to be punished in some way. During the first year of his reign, Ganondorf destroyed the castle, and built his own fortress in its place as his way of saying that Hyrule was now his domain,
said Rarity.
I haven't seen his castle yet, I said. Gasp. If that's the case, then I hope that your emotional state can handle it, for believe me when I say that your heart will shatter to pieces several times over when you witness it for yourself. Yes, the leaders of the tribes were commanded to witness his castle with their own eyes, and I was among them due to being the daughter of King Zora. He calls it
Ganon's castle,
and whenever I recall what it looked like, it gives me nightmares to no end, as the darkness that flows about the top of the tallest tower is beyond frightening. When my father discovered that the water temple had become corrupted, he commanded Lord Jabu to flee Zora's fountain, and seek refuge in a Zora colony somewhere in the southern seas, but the patron deity was the only one who managed to escape before the cold winds started to blow. The evil coming from the temple started to drain the water from Lake Hylia, which began as a slow process, but it soon escalated quickly, where the water drained at a rapid pace. No one was able to stop this from happening, as the evil was simply too strong to be contained, and when the snow came, well, we weren't prepared,
said Rarity.
What happened next?
I asked.
Whether you know it or not, we Zoras prefer to live in a moderate climate that is neither too hot nor too cold, but the snow made things colder, and we were suffering as it was a condition that our bodies couldn't adjust to. As the temperature dropped and the falling snow turned into ice, my father tried in vain to gather up as many of us as he could, and seek out a warmer climate for us to inhabit, but it was too late, for my people slowly began to succumb. The snow just wouldn't stop falling, and as a result we were all trapped underneath the ice which formed. Being trapped for so long felt like we had been frozen in some kind of suspended animation, and that all life surrounding us had come to a stop. No one came to see what had become of us as the temperature was far too cold for anyone to make such an attempt, yet the woman named Sheik somehow managed to survive the intense cold to free me,"
replied Rarity.
"From there you came here to the water temple in order to save your people,"
I said.
"So now you know the entire story as to what has befallen my home, and even now I continue to think about my people who remain trapped. They are unable to do anything except wait for their eventual demise unless something is done about that curse. I tried to make some progress in the temple, but I was completely stuck until you came along, which I'll admit was pretty good timing,"
said Rarity. And here I thought that my struggles were pretty bad, yet she has had it just as bad if not even worse because of what Ganondorf has done. Deep down, I did feel partially responsible for the plight of Hyrule as I did open the entrance to the sacred realm which enabled him to claim the Triforce, but now I've been given a chance to fix things and I intend on doing just that. A couple of minutes passed, and we were back in the central chamber with the intent on finally exploring the passageways which were now available.
"Which way do you think we should go, Spike?"
I asked.
"One way is definitely out of the question, and that's the southern route, as it has a gate blocking the way with a hook-shot plate behind it. For some reason, the plate is far away, which has me suspect that the hook shot as it is right now won't be able to reach it. There's probably a switch that will open the gate when activated, but I can see it only remaining open for a few seconds. We do have a few small keys to use now, so the locked door to the west is a viable option, and finally we have a passageway which goes to the east,"
replied Spike.
"The locked door is rather tempting right now, but I am leaning towards the eastern route as I am hoping it will lead us to the location of the compass. I'm actually getting tired of walking around in here without a true sense of direction, and the compass will surely relieve us of that little frustration,"
I said.
"Why don't we take another look at the map just to be sure as to where we're going?"
suggested Spike. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the dungeon map, and started to look over the second floor of the temple in order to see where each direction lead. Aside from the southern path, the remaining paths all came to dead ends rather abruptly, but then Spike revealed that they connect to rooms on the next floor.
"I'd say that the east path will lead us to the compass as it goes to a dead end." "You think it's too obvious a location to hide it?"
I asked.
"Most people don't really view a compass as being all that important, as they only care about the map and the treasure when it comes to exploring anywhere, so whoever hid the compass probably felt the same way and opted to hide it in a location which few would never consider checking out. Considering how two small keys were hidden in such secretive locations, I wouldn't be surprised if we find more treasure chests like that,"
replied Spike. It sounded to me that he wanted to go to the east as well, so I asked him and confirmed that he agreed with my decision as the compass would be invaluable. I had to think for a moment as to determine which way was east, so I told Rarity which way we were going, and she was fine with it so long as it would lead to something useful and not a waste of time. Jumping over the water to the other side, and entering the passage to the east, where it immediately turned to the left and continued on for quite a distance before turning to the right.
"I can hear the faint sound of water coming from around the corner,"
I said.
"That's quite the hearing you have,"
commented Spike.
"Why, thank you,"
I smiled. As we went around the next corner, I came to a stop due to there being a row of spikes in front of us, and another row on the ceiling which was slightly in front of the other row. A lone hook shot plate was on the wall with a small ledge below it, and I could just barely make out the top of a geyser of water, which was what I heard just a moment ago. When I asked Rarity to wait here while I see what was in the room above, this time she agreed, which felt rather awkward at first, but I can imagine why she would refuse, as I wouldn't want to end up being poked to pieces by those spikes.
There must be another plate somewhere, as the one on the wall in front of us can't be the only one in this area. The edge above the plate is too high for you to reach, but perhaps there is another target for the hook shot which we can't see because of how the ceiling down here is shaped thanks to those spikes above us. Make your way onto that ledge and maybe look around to see if you can find another plate,"
suggested Spike. Taking out the hook shot and aiming at the plate was easy enough, but as soon as I pulled myself onto the platform, I couldn't see another one on the opposite wall. Then I decided to take a look at the ceiling of the room above. Sure enough, there were 2 plates, although why would there be 2 when one is more than enough?
You'll need to pull yourself up using the plate that's the closest to the wall up there, as latching onto the other one will send you up, and then down onto the spikes below.
With that in mind, I aimed again and pulled myself up to the top, where I landed in a small room which featured a crystal switch in one corner, and the geyser which was covering up a big treasure chest.
No doubt that the switch will cause the geyser to recede for a while to allow us access to the chest,
I said.
I have a hunch that you'll only have a few seconds before the water rises back to its original position,
said Spike.
So what do you suggest?
I asked.
You should get as close as you can to the geyser, and hit the crystal switch using an arrow, which will give you enough time to open the chest,
replied Spike. It did sound simple enough, and for once it didn't involve having to make a mad dash, so I put the hook shot away and took out the fairy bout, where I immediately aimed for the switch. The distance wasn't as far away as I thought, so I could easily hit the target with just one arrow, right? I ended up having to use 3 arrows, which caused the geyser to recede, giving me mere seconds to open the treasure chest, and inside was the compass, which is exactly what I needed.
Now we can tell which way we're going, so progression should be easier,
I said.
Looks like we have more chests lying around all over the temple given how big it is, but there is one chest right there in the room beyond the one where we have determined the she-demon is currently located, said Spike. Do you think she is guarding something important?
I asked.
If she is, then I doubt she's aware of it, as her concern is focused mainly on you, but it does mean that defeating her just became even more important,
replied Spike. As I started to make my way back down to Ruto, and proceeding to where that locked door was, I wondered if the she-demon had figured out she was merely an obstacle meant to serve Ganondorf's whims.
Why is she taking her sweet time to get here? You appear to be showing signs of frustration because the kid is merely doing what all adventurers like her are committed to doing. If only you had placed me a lot closer to the entrance of this temple, I could have taken her down by now, and both of us would have received what we want. But you decided to have me wait here, which I feel was a stupid mistake on your part. But at the same time I will admit that it was brilliant, as this room is large enough for me to flex my power. So you have decided to follow my commands without question. If I want to stay alive as well as keep the power you have given me, I have no alternative but to obey you, Ganondorf. Besides, I've been doing some thinking since our last conversation, and I want to know what lies beyond this room. Behind this room is a small chamber which houses a powerful tool that the kid desires to have, and she will come all the way to you because she knows that she needs it. In order for her to claim it, she must overcome you, she-demon, and for that you have another incentive when it comes to doing battle against her. You shall be acting as a guardian whose purpose is to guard the treasure that she desires, and you will make certain that she never claims it.
said Tyrek.
So I am protecting something of great value? Though she has no idea what that item is? I can live with that, to be honest, as it will be enjoyable to see her fail when her existence is brought to an end by my hands. By the way, you said before that she could be one of the chosen, yet such a thing doesn't make sense to me. Maybe you could give me some sort of idea, because I don't want to end up making a mistake,
said Sunset Demon.
All you need to know is that you must stop her,
said Tyrek.
Not even a tiny little hint?
Asked Sunset Demon.
If the kid turns out to be one of the chosen, then she must defeat you in battle. Should you choose to defy me, then you shall be destroyed, as I mentioned to you before, so you would be wise to remember that and show restraint. If it is determined that she is not one of the chosen, then she will no longer serve any purpose to me, and you can do whatever you wish without holding back,
replied Tyrek.
Okay, I get what you're saying, and I will obey your command. By holding back until you have decided,
said Sunset Demon.
What are you planning?
Asked Tyrek.
Me?
How could I be doing anything like that when you clearly are superior to me in every way, and it's because of you that I have this wonderful power. You have even chosen to place a barrier in this room that prevents both her and me from leaving once she arrives, so there is no need to think that I am going to betray you.
If I were to backstab on one thing, it would be because you didn't bother to fix this speech impediment where I am not able to speak complete sentences without having to pause every now and then,
replied Sunset Demon.
It will be fixed when she arrives,
said Tyrek.
Then I am all set to face her, although I do wish that she would hurry up, as all of this waiting is boring me.
If I may speak so freely here, I don't see how she could be someone who is of great interest to you, as I know her better than anyone, and she isn't what I would call someone of having a great destiny. She used to have it all when she was me, and had ultimate power in the palm of her hand.
Then she had to throw it away because she was defeated by friendship, and that defeat also became my defeat. Because of your rise to power in this world, and corrupting the graveyard, I was given a second chance when I was reborn again as a mere shadow being devoid of anything,
said Sunset Demon.
Which means that your life now belongs to me, wretch, for it was my power which brought you back from the beyond. Now, I shall leave you, for she will arrive very soon, and remember that the sword hangs above your head with its blade close to you to serve as a reminder of what your purpose is. Pray that the sword does not cleave your head off of your shoulders, but perhaps it may end up happening anyway, depending on how I deem you to be of use to me,
said Tyrek.
He thinks I am going to betray him, and that's exactly what I want him to believe.
He isn't aware of the true reason, which remains close to me, and I shall enact upon it so as to avoid being destroyed. Sunset Shimmer, I am so hoping that you aren't one of these chosen, as he calls you, for that would mean getting to kill you, and taking what is rightfully mine.
If you are one of them, then that means you must live, and that is just not an option for me, despite what he says. It's a good thing that the equestrian magic within me combined with what I acquired from the element of magic will allow me to continue on even when I am brought down not just by your hand, but by his.
Sunset Demon said to herself. The locked door featured a block in front of it, although I recognized it as the one that I climbed up earlier in order to push the other block through the passageway. I looked up and saw another locked door right above, and to open it required finding the third and final location where I can change the water level. Unlocking the current door in front of me and opening it up lead us into a room where a crystal switch was to the right, and to the left was a geyser which was situated below a hole in the ceiling.
If you activate this switch, then the geyser is going to rise up, allowing us access to the room above, but it looks like you need to stand on it in order to go up, otherwise you'll just get pushed back,
said Spike.
I think Princess Ruto should go up first as she doesn't have anything to strike the switch with from a distance,
I suggested.
That's a good idea, as you can easily fire an arrow or even use the hook shot as the geyser is pretty close to the switch. Of course, we do need to take into account that a monster or two could be waiting above, and the princess would be in danger,
said Spike.
She can easily take care of herself as she isn't as weak as you make her out to be,
I said.
Maybe you can get close to the geyser and look upward to see if anything is up there,
suggested Spike. He really was concerned for her safety, which makes sense given how in the human world he does have an affection towards Rarity, so I chose to take a look to calm his nerves, but the instant I got close, something jumped down from above and knocked me off my feet where I landed on my rear. A blue Tektite had managed to get the jump on me, and had waited for one of us to attempt to reach the room above. Without even thinking about it, I took out the megaton hammer and smashed it into the ground, which caused the blue Tektite to flip over onto its back, and from there I proceeded to smash it over and over until it was defeated.
I knew there had to be something up there given that this puzzle is an easy one. I can't hear any other monsters, so it's safe to move up to the next room. Would you please stand on the geyser, Your Highness?
I asked.
Very well, but be sure to follow along as soon as I have reached the top,
replied Rarity as she stepped onto the geyser and awaited for me to strike the switch, which I did, and it rose up carrying her to the next room before dropping back down again once the timer had run out. Then it was my turn to use it, and once I put my hammer away, I took out the bow again and fired an arrow which actually hit the target on the first try for once. I was either starting to get better, or it was just a lucky shot, but either way, the geyser rose up and brought me into the next room, which had nothing apart from a door. The room on the other side of the door turned out to the central chamber again, but this time we were on an alcove which was well out of reach as well as hidden from view, and Rarity pointed to that which we were looking for.
And here we have the final location where the water level can be changed, so that means you now have access to all three. Now, when you play the song of the royal family in front of the Triforce panel on the wall here, the water will rise back up to where it was when you first entered the temple, so essentially you will have come full circle. There's something else I want to ask you,
I began.
What is it?
Asked Rarity.
Would you happen to know if somewhere inside of the water temple is some kind of item which looks like this?
I asked as I took out the hook shot in order to show her what it looked like.
The fact that there are so many plates all over the temple is no coincidence, so I was wondering if you knew anything about it given that you are the princess of the Zoras after all. When I was small, during a previous visit to the temple, one of the greatest heroes of the Zora tribe as a whole throughout the world visited our tribe here in Hyrule to pay his respects to my father, and also to visit the temple, for he had decided to finally retire as the heroic lifestyle he had been living had finally worn him down. As a sign of respect to him courtesy of my father, the Zora hero was permitted to seal away a weapon which he had used for many years somewhere deep in the temple, and it was never to be used until the time came when a new hero would emerge,"
said Rarity.
"What kind of weapon was it?"
I asked.
"I couldn't really tell as I only ever saw it once, but it did bear a resemblance to that hook shot of yours. I suppose that you will go and claim the weapon as your own, and that is fine for you are meant to have it as you are the new hero. If I recall correctly as to the location of the chest containing the Zora hero's weapon, it is in the northwest corner of the temple. In fact, it is behind the room where that evil version of yourself is waiting,"
replied Rarity. Without any hesitation, I took out the Ocarina of Time and played Twilight's Lullaby, which raised the water level up to its highest point, and the block from below rose up to give us access to the locked door on the 3rd floor. As soon as the water had finished rising, I jumped from the alcove and into the water, which prompted Rarity to follow with a concerned look on her face.
"We need to get to that room where the treasure is," I said. "That involves having to go up against that evil version of yourself,"
said Rarity.
"It was an inevitability which was going to happen no matter how hard I tried to move on from it. I always knew that the she-demon I once became would refuse to die, and instead desire to assume my life in the name of revenge. I'd rather not go through with this as I am afraid of my dark side more than I was when I was staring down against Ganondorf 7 years ago, but there is no other choice as I need that treasure in order to destroy the curse that plagues your home," I said. "Then I guess we must continue on and face the danger that awaits,"
said Rarity. Climbing onto the raised block thanks to the change in water level, I unlocked the next door and enter a long corridor which opened up into a large room further along.
"Is that some kind of waterfall up ahead?"
I asked.
"That does appear to be the case, although it's not unheard of in the temple,"
replied Rarity. As we walked forward to get a closer look at what was in front of us, there was indeed a waterfall where platforms with hook-shot plates on the front of them were flowing down into a bottomless pit. Another platform was below us, which had me suspect we had to jump down to it and then find some way of getting across. On the other side at the top of the waterfall was another plate with a passageway beyond that which lead up to another locked door, so it looks as though we won't be backtracking for the time being.
"How do you intend on getting us across, darling?" "Good question, but I think I'm getting the idea as to what the answer is going to be. Those moving platforms are obviously our means of climbing up to the ledge on the far side of the room, and the hook shot is needed to latch onto each platform and move our way up. We don't want to end up falling into that deep pit below, so we must move up quickly, and get close enough to the one target which we need to latch onto,"
I replied.
"Very impressive that you figured that out on your own,"
said Rarity.
"I wish that the hook shot wasn't so restrictive, otherwise we could just skip over the entire waterfall climbing section of this room, but we have no choice but to do this the hard way. I'm hoping that you don't mind holding on to me because we'll be making our way to the other side together as we don't have any other means of getting across. So, I want you to grab around my waist and hold on as tight as you can, for we're about to do this in about a few moments just as soon as I get the hook shot out," I said. Deep in my mind, I hope that Rarity doesn't think of this as me coming on to her, as clearly I don't think along those lines at all, but this was our only choice in the matter. Taking a deep breath, I jumped down to the platform below with the screams of Rarity echoing through my ears, which wasn't exactly pleasant. "Did you have to go and do that, especially when my ears are so close to your mouth?" "Sorry about that, as I was caught up in the moment," replied Rarity. "Now comes the hard part, which is climbing up this waterfall one platform at a time, but I'm hoping that my aim has gotten better, otherwise we'll be taking a plunge, which is something I'd rather not experience ever, I said. What about the bats?
Asked Rarity.
Bats?
I asked.
There are several bats flying around above us, and they look as though they want to attack us to drink on our blood,
replied Rarity.
Those are keys, and that's not what they are capable of doing, although that would be really bad, but this does make things even more complicated, for if they attack while we're moving up, it could knock us off of a platform and result in our deaths. We're going to get beaten up a little, so we'll have to grin and bear it until we get to the top, and then I can take care of our bat infestation, I said.
As the keys swooped down and slammed into both of us, Rarity once again screamed, which was typical of her, but I simply gritted my teeth and fired the hook shot at the closest falling platform, and up we went before I had to aim again. This was a true test of concentration, which wasn't easy given that I had a princess screaming in my ears, and bats attacking us every few seconds. What was perhaps the funny part, was the fact I was using the hook shot perfectly, as though I had been using it for years. Could it be that when under intense pressure, but not enough to make me lose it, I am capable of using my items without constantly messing up? I had no time to prove this theory, as I needed to get up to the top, if only to stop Rarity from screaming. Each time we made it up to another platform, the keys attacked with my screaming passenger, bearing most of the hits, as she was serving as an unfortunate shield, but that meant I needed to hustle even more.
Are we at the top yet?
Screamed Rarity.
As a matter of fact, yes,
I said, which surprised even me until I noticed that we had indeed made it up to the top. I guess I was so fixated on making it up here that I didn't even notice that we made it. Rarity then released her grip around my waist and crumpled to the ground, and I decided to destroy the keys using the hook shot, as I didn't have enough time to switch to the fairy bow. It did feel weird aiming at monsters with it, but Spike was there to guide me as I picked off each one until we were safe.
You were right about the hook shot being useful as a weapon, which does make sense now that I think about it, as the Zora hero must have used his version in the same manner. That was just ghastly to no end,
moaned Rarity.
I'm sorry that you had to be attacked several times as we climbed up, but there was no other way we could have done it without you staying behind while I continued on. There was no way I planned on leaving you anyway, as that would have been unfair to you,
I said.
While I do appreciate your honesty with me, Sunset Shimmer, I am simply shocked that those awful creatures were attacking me more than they were attacking you, as you're the adventurer here. But, I will not allow it to slow me down, and I must not whine and complain, for a future queen who does that would be viewed as being weak and unworthy to rule,
said Rarity.
You also need to tone down on the screaming,
I said.
I do apologize for doing that, as I wasn't expecting those monsters to hit so hard, but I do understand that this is what you have to put up with, so you have my earnest respect. For doing what you do takes a lot of training to be able to handle the pressure,
said Rarity.
Actually, I've been winging it for the most part,
I said sheepishly.
Really now? Well, like you said before, you're not the kind of hero people think you are, but then the most unlikely of heroes can end up being the best ones. Most who decide to become heroes and fight evil do so to acquire fame and fortune, yet they are nothing more than braggarts who claim to have done so many wonderful feats. I doubt that they are able to back up what they claim, yet you are different from them. You do this sort of thing because you have no choice, and while it sounds rather distressing, it isn't, because you are more realistic than those who came before you,
smiled Rarity.
You really think I'm a true hero?
I asked.
A true hero who happens to have a unique perspective and manner with which she handles herself,
replied Rarity. Those words actually made me feel pretty good inside of my heart, and I never really thought of myself as being a different kind of hero. Confidence was starting to swell up from within, and with that in mind I walked over to the door and unlocked it with the remaining small key that I had. This next room featured statues, although to be more precise, the heads of statues with water below in a rather shallow pool. There was a ledge that was simply too high to reach, and in the center of the room was another crystal switch, but this switch looked as though it had already been activated.
"What do you make of it, Spike?"
I asked.
"This room operates differently when it comes to the water, for it's separate from what has been filling back up into the temple. That switch over there must raise and lower the water level, but I'm not sure what those statues are for, so give me a second to figure out what we have to work with. I see a few hook-shot plates on the walls, so it looks like you'll need to pull yourself across, so how does the switch factor into all of this?" "I think I may have the solution, but I need you to do something first, Sunset Shimmer,"
replied Spike.
"What's that?"
I asked.
"I need you to hit the switch with the hook shot or any ranged attack,"
replied Spike. Since he did say any ranged attack, this was a good time to finally use my fire magic, which has been useless so far in the temple. When I struck the switch, the color inside of it changed from blue to red, and I could hear the sound of something rising from the ground apart from the water.
"As I thought, the switch not only raises the water level, but also the statues which have their own hook-shot plates on. You'll need to navigate your way around the edge of the room by hitting the switch at the right times and use those statues to pull you around, and even climb on them in some cases. That one statue over there that's below the ledge is the one we need to get to, as it will allow us to reach up and progress to the next room, which is where the she-demon is located. So we're literally on her front doorstep?"
I asked.
"There's no turning back now, so we need to continue on despite what lies beyond this room,"
replied Spike.
"Princess Ruto, you'll need to grab onto me again as we make our way around this puzzle, but this time we're not under any kind of pressure, and we're not going to be attacked several times over like we were in the last room,"
I said.
"You just have to watch out for those 3 blue tektites scheming on the surface of the water. Right now, they won't bother us as long as we don't attack them, but they may react if we get too close to their territory, as you know how protective they are. Considering that the water level rises and lowers along with the statues, those blue tektites will only be a problem when the water is raised, so do keep that in mind when moving around,"
said Spike. Looking down at the water, I saw them just floating there on the surface waiting for the opportunity to attack, so I knew that I needed to keep as far away as possible to protect Rarity, who wrapped her arms around my waist again. I aimed the hook shot at the plate on the statue and pulled ourselves over to the next ledge where we were stuck with a second statue blocking the way forward.
"If we pull ourselves across using the plate on the statue, we'll just end up falling into the water, and the plate on the wall will do us no good as the statue is too tall for us to climb over it,"
I said.
"Why not hit the switch again and lower the statues back down like I suggested? That way we can get to the ledge on the other side, and climb over the statue to proceed. Remember that the blue tektites are watching our every move, so be careful not to draw their attention,"
said Spike. Hitting the switch caused the statues and water to lower, which allowed us to cross to the other side, and on to the next part, which involved having to hit the switch again in order to raise the one statue that serves as our way out of this room.
"A shame that I can't just simply stun them with a Deku nut,"
I groaned.
"Any attack will just make them pursue us, and we can't afford to have the princess be placed into harm's way again. No, the best thing you can do is simply ignore them and focus on getting through this room,"
said Spike. Even though he was right, I did want to slow them down just in case something goes wrong, but I suppose hitting them would count as doing something wrong anyway. The puzzle actually turned out to be a lot easier from this point onward, as all I had to do really was hit the switch 3 more times to raise the statue and pull ourselves over to the ledge it was on, lower it again to climb onto it, and raise it to reach the ledge. When we made it to the top, Rarity let go of me again before she pointed, which made me suspect that something was in front of us, and it turns out to be the one monster which I didn't want to see again.
"Not that thing again,"
I moaned.
Which like I said back in the fire temple, is going to be a monster which we'll be seeing from now on. I do find it strange that there would be one here of all places, as they prefer the darkness, but then again that doesn't make sense given what we saw in the previous temple. This like appears to be stuck as that bed of giant spikes is stopping it from getting any closer to us, so you're free to deal with it however you so desire,"
said Spike.
"While my fire magic would be the best way to get rid of this abomination, I think I'll go with the fairy bow as I need to get better with shooting," I said.
"Be glad that you didn't go with the hook shot," began Spike.
"Why? Is it a better alternative?"
I asked.
"Using it against a like will cause it to get stunned for a few moments as it's too bulky to simply get destroyed by it, but by latching onto its flesh, you get pulled right into it after the paralysis takes effect. You know what happens when you get caught by a like, so I don't feel the need to repeat myself,"
replied Spike. Taking out the fairy bow and aiming at the monster, I fired an arrow which connected, so I followed up with a second which destroyed it, and when it flattened itself out before disappearing, it left behind several red rupees. I had more important things on my mind than collect rupees, so once more I asked Rarity to hold on tight because the next hook shot plate was on the ceiling right above where the like was. She wrapped her arms around me, and I fired at the plate, pulling us up and over the spikes before landing in front of the door.
"Can you feel the evil coming from beyond the door?"
I asked.
"I have never felt anything this powerful before, with the exception of Ganondorf. I would completely understand if you would prefer that I stay behind while you go through and confront the dark version of yourself, for this is something that you must accomplish on your own. Knowing me, I would merely be getting in your way,"
replied Rarity.
"No, I need you by my side as you're my friend, and the mission of saving your people is your burden," I said. "Yes, my people need me to free them with your help, of course, as you are the legendary hero," said Rarity.
With that out of the way, I opened the door where it sealed itself shut behind us with iron bars, but what I was staring at defied all logic. The entire room was slightly flooded with water which ran up to our ankles, but that was the least of our problems as there was a small island in the center of the room with a dead tree on it. There were also some broken pieces of stone structure scattered across the room, but the weirdest thing was that there were no walls to be had, meaning that basically this room carries on forever into the distance. Way off in the distance was what appeared to be a piece of decor common in the water temple, and at its base was another door which was sealed shut with iron bars.
"What in the wide world of Equestria is up with this room?"
I asked.
"I have no idea, as this is something I have never seen before during all of my previous visits to the temple, but I am sensing a powerful magical force at work here which could explain what we're seeing. We should be careful as we are now trapped inside of this room, and the she-demon is somewhere in here with us. I think that dead tree on that small island is something we should take a closer look at because there is not much else for us to do," replied Rarity.
As we made our way over to the island, I also noticed that our reflections could be seen in the water, which was pretty cool, but also creepy that we could see them here but in no other room where water was featured. The dead tree on the island was exactly that, yet it made me feel really uneasy as it was just so out of place with the rest of the room.
"I don't see anything out of the ordinary,"
I commented.
"I could have sworn that this tree would have some kind of secret to it, but it looks like an ordinary dead tree, which isn't really the most pleasant thing." "Well, we could see about that door in front of us even though we can tell from here that it's locked,"
said Rarity. We took several steps forward before she came to a sudden stop, and told me to do the exact same, which had me wondering what was wrong.
"Don't look now, Sunset Shimmer, but your reflection has just disappeared when we stepped off of that island."
I looked down at the water, and sure enough my reflection was gone as though it vanished without a trace. Rarity still had her reflection in the water, so what was going on with me?
"Sunset Shimmer,"
began Spike.
"What is it?"
I asked.
"You might want to turn around and look at what or who is standing in front of that dead tree,"
replied Spike. He had a strong fear in his voice which made me feel like not wanting to take a look, but I had to because I had to face this fear head on, so I slowly turned around and standing there was the she-demon herself, or as she called herself, Sunset Demon. At first she looked like a shadow, what with lacking any kind of features, but this quickly changed as the color returned to her body, and she became the very thing that I once was. Was this what I looked like when I was facing off against my future friends at the conclusion of the fall formal? I knew that I had become a wicked creature, but I never imagined that I would be looking right back at it.
"You've kept me waiting for a long time, Sunset Shimmer, but at long last we can finally settle things between us. If you had arrived mere moments later, I would have simply ripped you pieces for making me wait, and yet you made it here just in time. Oh! Are you surprised that not only have I received my color back, but also being able to speak properly? I suppose thanks are in order for the benefactor who made all of this possible, for it was through his power that I have been restored,"
said Sunset Demon.
"So you ended up selling your soul to Ganondorf?"
I asked.
"Me? Selling my soul? Ha! You know as well as I that I lack something so weak, so no, I didn't do anything like that. Granted, I had no other choice but to turn to him to become stronger, and it does mean he has become my master. However, I can overlook that fact because he saw my potential, and decided to use me as a means of finally doing away with you,"
replied Sunset Demon. Her eyes then began to glow bright red, and this resulted in the dead tree being reduced to nothing but ashes, yet it was the aura I sensed which had me worried.
"That was just a tiny sample of the power that I have been given, and what you should have kept back in the human world when you had it all for that one moment. That's because I was blinded by the pursuit of power and consumed with rage for wanting to get back at Princess Celestia for denying me what I believed was my destiny, but I realized that I was just ignorant and immature. Celestia knew that I was going through a difficult time, and she wanted me to remain on the right path, yet I chose not to, and look what happened,"
I said.
"You went off on your own and achieved greatness,"
said Sunset Demon.
"And that was the mistake I made,"
I said.
"It was never a mistake,"
shouted Sunset Demon as she burst into flames which caused the temperature to increase for a brief moment, and fireballs shot off from her body and fizzled in the water before she looked down at the ground as her fiery form cooled and became normal again.
"You had so much power in your hands, my dear other half, that no one could stand in your way, and you made all of the rules, which is what you desired. Princess Celestia denied you the right to become a princess of Equestria because she feared the power that you were capable of, and instead she gave that power to the one person who deserves it least of all. Twilight Sparkle.
Sunset Demon then raised her head and I could see a twisted smile across her face which made me cringe because of how hideous she looked.
That girl had nothing and was at your mercy because you had everything, yet she ended up defeating you using the power of friendship. Not a day goes by that I'm grateful to her for that,
I said.
Because you decided to accept friendship, I ceased to be and became trapped in an eternal state of limbo. Then when this world came into existence as a result of an even greater power, I found myself sealed away underneath a graveyard where I remained for 7 years. When you went underground to claim that hook shot of yours, I was able to latch onto your power long enough for me to awaken from my slumber, but I was so weak that I couldn't confront you until I was stronger,"
said Sunset Demon.
"You gained enough power that you went to confront me in the Death Mountain crater, but your arrogance caused you to end up taking a plunge into the lava where I saw your body dissolve. Guess the evil king had other plans, which is why we're standing face to face against one another. The way I look at you right now, you're just another one of his servants,"
I said.
"How dare you!"
shouted Sunset Demon.
"It's the truth because you pretty much hinted at it, and it was obvious that would be the case. Listen, we don't need to fight in order to resolve our differences. I chose to embrace my new friends, and becoming a much better person for it. You on the other hand are just a phantom of my past who continues to torment me because of what I used to be, but you no longer need to exist as I have no desire to ever go back to the old days,"
I said. Having said my piece on the matter, I turned around and began to walk towards the door, but I was brought to a stop by a huge burst of flame. Turning around, Sunset Demon was enraged again, and she looked as though she was about to explode in a fit of rage.
"Don't think you can just walk away, for you should know that this room will remain closed until one of us is no longer able to get up and breathe. In other words, you're mine, and there's nothing you can do about it,"
said Sunset Demon.
"Are you that blind?"
I asked.
"Before that Twilight Sparkle came into the picture, you had everything you could have wanted, and when you used the element of magic to change into me, you were able to achieve ultimate power. I realize now that you were much too weak to wield such power, so I intend on making sure things will be different. Once I have killed you, and taken your place as the one true Sunset Shimmer, I'll be able to regain the power that I lost and my name will go down as being one that's feared by all,"
replied Sunset Demon. She then calmed herself down and her fiery aura disappeared, but then she began to form fireballs in her hands and they grew in size until they were the size of medicine balls. The she-demon started to laugh like a lunatic as she struggled to maintain her composure.
"This is going to be so satisfying, for I've waited a long time to be able to get my hands on you, and know that to move on with your pathetic quest, you have to defeat me. Is there no other way?"
I asked.
"None, so now the time for talk is over,"
replied Sunset Demon.
"All right, I'll fight you," I said.
I then tilted my head back and forth several times to indicate to Rarity that she needed to stand back and allow me to handle this problem, and she nodded her approval and began to step away. Sunset Demon noticed what she was doing, and her eyes glowed before she screamed and fired beams from them which struck Rarity and sent her into the back wall next to the door where she was trapped.
Gasp! "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm aware that she has nothing to do with this, but she shouldn't be here as the invitation was just for you. For the time being, she will be safe over there out of my way, but when I am finished with you, I suppose that I will need something else to occupy my time. This princess will keep me busy for a while, yet in the end she will become useless, which is when she will have to die. It's rather ironic, as back in the human world, we never had such tendencies, but in this world the urge to commit bloodlust is too good an opportunity to pass up on. Yes, I'll have my fun before getting rid of her once I've become bored,"
said Sunset Demon. She then started to laugh, which made me feel so much rage deep inside of me, but I knew that I couldn't allow her to get to me, as that would mean losing control of my emotions and transforming. Instead, I decided to take advantage of her laughing and used my fire magic, yet she quickly saw what I was doing and countered by throwing those 2 fireballs.
"At long last we can finally get this started, but I notice that you are carrying a lot of various items on your person, which has me wondering just what you've been doing since you changed your life, as you say." "These are items which I've picked up on my journey, and I intend on using them against you,"
I said.
"I don't care what you use, for it all means nothing, as this is where you will be killed,"
said Sunset Demon. That's when she fired beams from her hands, which I dodged by jumping to the side, but she was able to hit me with a second blast before I was even able to land. She followed this up with additional beams, which I backflipped to avoid them, but when I landed she was right behind me, and when I stood back up she thrusted her head forward in order to speak into my ear.
"You have no clue as to how strong I really am, do you? I guess that's to be expected, seeing as you do lack the intellect, but I hope you don't make this too easy, as I do want to be challenged for a while before finishing you off."
I then tried to punch her in the face by focusing my magic into my hand, and using it as a fist. To my delight, I was able to punch her in the nose, causing her to reel back before showing her face with a bleeding nose, which she checked with her own hand, and that's when her expression turned to pure hatred.
You would dare do this to the one who will make you become what you're meant to be? Heh, I guess you would fight back, and that works for me, as I don't want this to be lopsided, as where would the fun be in that?
Sunset Demon then ran over to the island, and began to laugh again as she started to build more fire in her hands.
"Any ideas?"
I asked.
"I have no idea as to what your actual strengths and weaknesses are from where you really come from, so all I can suggest to you is to conquer yourself. If you're worried about Princess Ruto, she only lost consciousness as that attack did catch her by surprise, and hitting against a wall doesn't make things any more pleasant. Remember that you have plenty of items at your disposal which you can use, but you do need to take into account her own abilities,"
replied Spike.
"Some are bound to be useless against her, as she will likely avoid and attack me in response for being too slow with them. I'd probably be more safer using my magic, but I think she is expecting me to use fire because that is my natural ability,"
I said.
"The Master Sword is an option, you know,"
suggested Spike.
"I know, and I will use it only as a last resort because of my lack of skills in the use of a blade,"
I said.
"Also, since this room is filled with water, you should be able to use your water magic to manipulate it to your will. I doubt she is aware that you've been given magical boosts courtesy of the Great Fairy, so use them to give her a surprise,"
said Spike. That's when I noticed that Sunset Demon had finished powering up those fireballs to massive proportions, and tossed both of them at me at the same time. The first one I dodged by literally dropping into the water, but the second one changed direction slightly to aim downward, and it struck me so hard that I went flying into the air. After what felt like a few seconds, I landed in the water, which managed to cushion my fall, but the she-demon dashed up to me, and used another massive fireball, which did hurt me at first. Luckily, I was able to duck down just in time as the water fizzled out whatever remaining damage I would have taken.
"This is starting to get boring,"
said Sunset Demon.
"Oh, I have only just gotten started,
I said.
You may not understand it right now, my other half, but I am hoping that you don't put up much resistance. If you do, then you will no doubt be heading into a grave situation from which you may not survive. For my sake as well as your own, keep on fighting with me, but don't end up proving yourself,"
said Sunset Demon. Her words, while confusing, were also hinting at the possibility that she was trying to tell me something about this entire situation, and what Ganondorf had to do with it. It sounded like he was testing me, yet the she-demon doesn't wish for me to pass. I wanted to think this through, but I had no time, as she decided to charge right into me and knock me to the ground, submerging me underwater in an attempt to drown me.
"Oh, I would love nothing more than to drown you and end it here and now, but other factors deny me such a pleasure."
She then picked me up and tossed me aside, where I got back onto my feet, but I did have a puzzled expression on my face due to what she said.
"What does that mean?"
I asked.
"It's nothing you need concern yourself with, so instead you can be concerned with this,"
shouted Sunset Demon. She charged at me, and in a quick reaction, I ended up getting stuck in a grappling position with her, where each of us began to struggle in an attempt to overpower the other. I had to prevail in this little skirmish, as the fate of this world hung in the balance, as well as returning home. Above all else, I had to avoid losing control of my emotions, as that would be the last thing I need.
"For a weak girl, you certainly have plenty of guts. Too bad that you decided not to pursue the path of power, as you would have easily destroyed me by now, but instead you went with friendship, which in my opinion was the worst decision you ever made in your entire life. Why are you holding back?"
I asked.
"Me? Never!"
shouted Sunset Demon.
"Don't try to lie to the one person who knows you better than anyone else. I can tell that you're holding back, as I wouldn't have lasted this long against you, so I suspect you can't kill me because of Ganondorf holding some kind of control over you. If you were to end my life a lot sooner than what he is expecting, then your own life becomes forfeit. I mean, you spent all this time and had to endure so much just to get to this point, and you could easily throw it away, all because your desire and his don't mesh together in any way,"
I said.
"Shut up!"
yelled Sunset Demon, as she kicked me so hard in the stomach that I broke off the grapple, and collapsed to the ground in pain, but before I could react, I found myself being pushed into the water again. She was applying all of her strength to make sure that I don't get up, and was determined to drown me as a result of being consumed with rage. Hold on a second. Why is she even trying this tactic anyway? Because of the Zora tunic, I am able to breathe underwater, so I should be fine. At least, that's what I believe this garment can do, so why am I struggling to breathe? Is it possible that her power is somehow negating the effects of my tunic? Then again, could it be Ganondorf's power at work, whereby my ability to breathe underwater doesn't work as long as I remain in this bizarre room? Whatever was happening regarding this, it wasn't bothering the she-demon, as she continued to apply the pressure, and my efforts of pulling through were looking mighty grim. To be continued. Chapter 38, End of the Darkness.